So as she said, I'm Kathy King, and I'm running to be your State Board Education representative because I think it's time that we have some members on the State Board of Education that utilize common sense about political pandering when it comes to crucial decision-making regarding textbooks, curriculum, and testing standards and Texas education. There's a lot of important issues that the State Board addresses that affect the quality of our children's education. So let's start right off with testing. State testing has become the beacon of education in Texas. We utilize testing to measure both student and teacher performance. When the reality of the situation is a bubble-in test really can't measure growth of the student or measure the performance of the teacher. And a teacher shouldn't be punished for the student performing poorly on a STAR test. Because I've heard countless accounts of kids who've done very well on a subject all year long, only to not do very well on the STAR test. So I think we can actually find better ways to measure teacher performance and student growth. I believe that performance-based assessments would go a lot further, and educational portfolios would go a lot further in actually measuring student growth and success. And these tools actually give us some feedback as to the student's strengths and weaknesses, so we can actually allow the student to build on those. Unlike the STAR test, which is basically, their ability to memorize rote material. So the question is it worth $90 million a year that we spend on the STAR test? Last year, we spent $90 million on training and administering the STAR test. Luckily, we're near the end of our $462.4 million 5-year contract with Pearson. It'll expire in August of 2015. As your representative, I would be there to advocate that we utilize better assessment. Like I said, some of my ideas are performance-based assessments or educational portfolios. Those are just a couple ideas. Of course, we need some kind of assessment because it allows us the waivers to No Child Left Behind. But we really need to look at what assessments we're using and how we can utilize assessments for functional quality outcomes. So another area that needs to be some great attention to is the area's history and science textbooks and curriculum. When it comes to history, the changes that were made in about 2010 were horrifying, to say the least. I believe when it comes to history, our students aren't Democrat and they're not Republican. And we shouldn't implement learning standards that would mold their political beliefs. We need leaders in our future that can look at history, both the good and the bad, and utilize that information to develop their own beliefs. George Orwell said it best when he said the most effective way to destroy the people is to obliterate their own understanding of their history. And I believe that's the State Board of Education's basic premise when they changed these things in 2010. I believe that they were playing to a political agenda to basically mold a generation of conservative thinking leaders. We can see key language entered specifically by the members of the State Board of Education in 2010 that has a serious conservative slant. Members thought it was crucial that our high school students learn about leading conservative groups of the 80s and 90s, but not any minority or liberal groups. Another real strong thing they pushed for was to have students essentially question the separation of church and state and analyze the Judeo-Christian beliefs of our founding fathers. Yet ironically, Thomas Jefferson was taken out as a founding father to study. Perhaps this is because he was a deist. But perhaps it's because he wrote a letter to the Danbury Baptists in 1802, and he stated, I quote, "I contemplate with sovereign reverence the act that the whole American people, which declared in their legislature, should make no law establishing a religion or prohibiting the free exercise of, and thus building a wall of separation between church and state. So this is why Thomas Jefferson is not considered a founding father in the text curriculum anymore. So instead of the students learning and analyzing the First Amendment, they're going to spend a great deal of time memorizing and understanding the Second Amendment. Because you know, there's more power in a gun than there is in individual freedoms. During these changes, the current representative for District 7, David Bradley, proudly touted that the curriculum revisions have always been political, but this time the ruling faction has just changed. I simply find this to be unacceptable. Like I said, kids aren't Democrat and Republicans. And decisions regarding the education should not be political, but based on fact and balanced. I was kind of slightly saddened to find out on the third day of these deliberations of history revisions, three Democrats basically conceded and left. I can kind of understand that to a point, but I'm more inclined to think that I'm going to be the type of person that's going to be kicking and screaming my way out the door. I will stay there till the last minute. So when we look at science, we see another instance of where personal beliefs and political agendas overruled common sense and facts. Luckily this year, through pressure from the public and the work of organizations such as the Texas Freedom Network, we were able to see a victory in science instruction through the adoption of good science textbooks. But it wasn't without a long fight. Many conservative members and past members of the State Board of Education continue to push for instruction in science that waters down science, basically. So many board members have pushed for curriculum and textbooks to deny climate change or to point out alleged weaknesses in evolution, or to actually, some have actually proposed to teach creationism alongside evolution. So at one point, it was kind of funny because some of the things they actually wanted to introduce, the publisher actually said, I don't think so. So there's a lot that goes kind of behind the scenes when they do textbooks revisions or curriculum revisions that a lot of the public doesn't see. Generally, what's supposed to happen is they make committees, and these committees review the curriculum and the textbooks that are supposed to be adopted. But in the past, what we found is some of the conservative members on the State Board of Education have been stacking the deck in their favor. Again, through the hard work of the Texas Freedom Network, it was discovered that 6 creationists were appointed to the committee to review science textbooks. This behavior is not only completely unethical, it's completely dangerous. It's great that we live in a country where we're free to choose our religious beliefs. But when those religious beliefs spill over into important decision makings regarding curriculum and textbooks, aren't they essentially infringing on the religious beliefs of others? While they want to teach creationism alongside evolution, I'm curious to find out if they would be willing to teach all creation stories. The Muslim story, the Hindu story, maybe throw in some Scientology. I seriously doubt it, and that's why we need to stick to facts. So, as your representative, I would ensure that any person appointed to any committee reviewing standards and textbooks was adequately educated in the subject matter they're reviewing. So, lastly, I want to highlight an area that I'm pretty passionate about. It's like one of those things that I first noticed when I worked as an occupational therapist, in the schools. You see, as an occupational therapist, I look at kids from a developmental standard. When I see a 5-year-old, I look at what he's supposed to be doing from a developmental standpoint, both emotionally, cognitively, socially. So I really have come to the conclusion that early childhood and kindergarten programs have focused so highly on academics They've completely ignored child development. So if presented with the opportunity, I would request a review of early childhood and kindergarten programs for developmental appropriateness. Now it's kind of hard for me to kind of wrap up and tell you and break down all the things that are going through a 5-year-old. So, and how developmentally appropriate activities lead to building skills needed for academics, like certain activities are for hand strengthening, for writing. Certain developmental activities, lead to tracking for reading. Certain, skills lead to spatial awareness for math. I could spend like all day talking about that. But instead I decided to bring a visual that explains the best. Put these on the table here. Oh. Okay, so what we have here are 2 single-layer cakes made exactly the same. They have the same, it's made with same box, and they were cooked with the same temperature, almost identical, except one of these cakes does not have eggs. Can you figure out which one?
Yeah.
All right. You see, the eggs in a cake are like child development and academics. Both serve a purpose to mix all the other ingredients so that the outcome has stability and the ability to rise. Developmentally appropriate curriculum sets the foundation for all other learning. It's time that this fact is recognized and implemented back into early childhood and kindergarten programs. Now, I've probably rambled on enough. There are other issues that I'd like to see addressed at the level of State Board of Education, such as abstinence-only teaching. It's got to go. It's not effective. Texas ranks number 5 in teen pregnancy rate. We need to arm our kids with adequate health information to protect them from pregnancy and transmission of STDs. I also believe that we need some better oversight into special education programs to make sure that we're utilizing best practice and utilizing research-backed techniques when working with special populations. I believe we can create a better tech standards by implementing the actual input of the teachers who teach in those areas. We need to reestablish teacher respect by listening to them instead of playing power games with them on the State Board of Education. But right now, I kind of feel like I've talked enough. And what I want to do is I want to turn the floor over to you guys. I want to hear your ideas, because I know everyone in this room wants a better education for their kids, their grandkids, and generations beyond. And I'm not a politician. I am different. But what I am is I'm a strong advocate. I'm a loudmouth, okay? And I am inviting you guys to basically utilize that. I want to hear your ideas on how we can bring education back to number 1.